Is it just me, or does anybody else long to break up with capitalism? It gets so tiring, always feeling conflicted, overwhelmed, frustrated, angry, isolated, stressed about money, and fearful for the future, doesn't it? And then you look around and see greedy billionaires and corporations hoarding wealth, suppressing wages, advocating for policies that increase their wealth and decrease ours, and contributing 1,000,000 times more carbon to the atmosphere than the average person, hastening climate change and extreme weather events. Well, you can't escape capitalism completely, but there are ways you can do less to uphold it. And in doing so, you simultaneously reduce your support for those selfish billionaires and corporations. But don't worry, this doesn't mean you're sentenced to a life of sacrifice, hardship, and sadness. On the contrary, you'll likely find that the more you boycott those billionaires, the richer, more fun, and more resilient your life becomes. So let's start this masterclass by learning from and taking inspiration from some modern-day Thoreaus who have found ways to joyfully live without money. In case you haven't noticed, greedy billionaires and corporations are trying to steal our democracy and create an oligarchy that enriches them at the expense of you and me, the working class people of America. Luckily, more and more of us are getting motivated to fight back and resist this hostile takeover by voting with our dollars. We're committed to boycotting as many goods and services as possible from their companies. As someone who has embraced frugality and spent very little money over the last 10 years, I thought it would be fun to create a short video series full of tips, resources, strategies, and mindset shifts that would be helpful to anyone looking to reduce their financial support for this unwanted takeover of our governments. And I said our governments because the meddling of billionaires isn't just limited to the United States. A big part of my efforts to reclaim my life from capitalism, or at least do a lot less to financially uphold it, was learning from those who experimented with living without money for ethical reasons in our modern world. So in this first video of what will be a 3-part series on resisting and defunding billionaires, I want to share the stories of some of those people. My point isn't to encourage you to avoid money completely. In fact, for most of us, a certain baseline of money makes life easier to navigate and helps us thrive. But learning from others in this realm can inspire us to live more creatively and get us thinking differently about what is possible. In fact, I find this concept of moneyless solutions and living without money so important to true financial resilience that it's one of the pillar topics I cover in my Personal Economy Makeover course, which I've linked to in the description below. Before highlighting those folks, though, I'd like to offer a few caveats. Firstly, each of these people comes from a place of privilege merely by the fact that they've very consciously chosen to live without money. There are sadly many other people living without money, or very little of it, but not by choice. And secondly, in our current society, it seems to me that it's impossible to completely extricate ourselves from all involvement with money. Because even if we're not paying for our lodgings, someone's paying the property taxes on wherever we're staying. And thirdly, most of the examples I'm about to cite of moneyless living take place outside of the United States, where people have access to universal health care. I think having access to universal health care makes this lifestyle much more accessible and compelling. So with those caveats out of the way, let's get to their stories and see how they're living beyond money. Number 1 is Daniel Suelo, an American who was my first exposure to someone intentionally living without money. He spent about 15 years of his adult life primarily living in caves outside Moab, Utah. If I remember correctly, he also house sat for people and found other creative ways to find a place to stay from time to time. Daniel did a lot of dumpster diving to feed himself and was one of my early inspirations to start trying it. In 2012, author Mark Sundin wrote a book called The Man Who Quit Money to share Daniel's intriguing story. This book may well be available to check out at your local library.
There are some valid points about using the library when it's paid for by taxes, and it's the one exception to my rule, but I don't take government assistance. I've foregone everything else.
Daniel has since returned home to act as a caregiver to his mother and does now use money on her behalf in his efforts to take care of her. But he also notes in a blog post, with a few exceptions, I still don't take or use money for myself. But I did have to get a state ID, I manage my mom's finances, I pay her bills, I shop for her, dealing with the general bureaucracy. I feel as passionate as ever about a moneyless world, and I hope to return to moneyless living. Number 2 is Mark Boyle, who lives in the UK. Mark studied economics at university and then found himself disheartened with the economic realities of the business world after that. This eventually prompted him to spend a few years living without money. He procured a free camper and then found a place to trade his labor for parking it.
I'm here on a freezing day on a farm outside Bath to meet Mark Boyle. He's the no-money man. For the past year, he's been living here in a caravan without spending a single penny.
There he set about hooking up a solar shower, cooking over a makeshift rocket stove, and growing much of his food. He shares his philosophy as well as his experiences from those years in the Moneyless Manifesto, which he posted online in a Word document that you can access for free, and I've included a link to that in the description below as well. He also wrote this book, Moneyless Man, about his self-described year of freakonomic living. These days, Mark lives in a simple off-grid cabin he bought for himself with the proceeds from his book, and still limits his use of money and technology.
Yeah, I guess there's a few reasons why I live in this cabin without electricity and no email, no phone, no washing machine, no electric lighting. I guess the first and the main motivation is always ecological.
3 is Heidemarie Schwärmer, and I'm sure I just butchered her name. Heidemarie experienced a rags to riches and back to rags childhood in Europe. She then went on to become a teacher and eventually a psychotherapist in her 50s. Heidemarie found that money didn't satisfy her. She missed the strife, challenges, and struggles of her childhood years. One of her first steps towards living beyond money occurred when she established Germany's first exchange circle, facilitating swaps between members. The major catalyst for her shift towards moneyless living occurred when friends invited her to house sit for them.
The last 17 years I have been living without money. The motivation for this came out of my outrage about the situation in the world.
Heidemarie initially thought she'd try living without money for 1 year. She surprised even herself when she found living without money even richer than living with it. So she sold her house and lived out of a suitcase for the rest of her life. Her experiment ended up lasting 20 years until she passed away at the age of 73. Number 4 is Jo Nemeth. In search of ways to reduce her impact on the planet, Jo started living without money back in 2015. To do so, she initially bartered her childcare and maintenance skills in exchange for being able to reside on someone else's property in a DIY shed she made for herself from salvaged materials. Later, she ended up moving in with her friend Sharon after Sharon's husband passed away. The primary focus of Jo's is eliminating her use of fossil fuels, and she's been working with Sharon to retrofit Sharon's house to free it from them. In a recent profile of her in The Guardian, Jo mentioned she feels more secure now than when she was earning money. And if you want to delve further into Jo's backstory and musings, check out her website. One thing I hope you picked up from all 4 of these examples is just how much significant value they all found in leading lives without money. In fact, none of them went back to a mainstream life earning money from a job and buying lots of stuff. Even though Danielle Suelo and Mark Boyle aren't currently living completely without money, they have designed their lives to have very little interaction with it and remain committed to using and relying on it as little as possible. This has also been the case for me. Finding moneyless ways to meet my needs and solve my problems has increased my interactions with others as I seek to borrow things instead of buy them, strengthened my creativity by pushing me to create free alternatives using materials I already have, and made me more resilient in the face of climate change, political uncertainty, and the whims of capitalism. As I saw someone else write recently in a comment here on YouTube, resilience is resistance. And remember, if you want help designing your oligarch resilient and your climate resilient financial life, you can check out my Personal Economy Makeover course in the description below. If you've been active on social media lately, you know I'm not the only one encouraging you to boycott and divert your dollars from billionaires and corporations. That's because, as has become glaringly clear, the strongest lever in our society is money. And when we act collectively, we the people wield a lot of it. certainly enough to make dents that negatively impact the wealthy ruling class that only care about themselves and getting even richer. Whether you do it to save democracy, slow down climate change, protect your children's future, or to ensure a better future for yourself, making these spending sacrifices is a major part of the activism of our time. And I said sacrifices in quotes because so many people perceive not spending money as deprivation. As we've seen in the examples I shared today, these people who embraced not spending money as an ethical choice found their lives feeling richer and more secure than when they did use money. Again, I'm not suggesting you live without money. I don't. But wouldn't it be great if we, as a society, started doing more to normalize, glamorize, admire, and even emulate the confidence and skills of those living without money, instead of the insecurity and greed of the broligarchs who still don't have enough of it to feel safe, secure, and satisfied. Now that you have seen several examples of people who have found tremendous satisfaction in their moneyless lives, let's take a look at the gift economy. That's where generosity, reciprocity, and the desire to connect trump the urge to turn every exchange into a financial transaction that further enriches those billionaires and corporations. Capitalism loves that your first instinct every time you want something is to reach for your wallet or to click that buy now button. Greedy corporations and billionaires have spent billions of dollars over the years honing and fine-tuning that instinct in us. We've gone from being referred to as citizens to more commonly being viewed as consumers. This proclivity to buy now that has been cultivated in us has squelched our creativity and resourcefulness, squashing any inclination to explore alternatives to scratch that particular itch. Since I've already made this video highlighting many of the creative and moneyless ways you can meet your needs while enjoying life a lot more, in today's video I want to delve into how we can rely on each other more to access many of the resources that are already circulating all around us, instead of further enriching corporations, billionaires, and corrupt politicians. So if that sounds appealing, hello, and welcome to part 2 of my series on resisting and defunding billionaires. As much as capitalism has tried to convince us otherwise, we do not live in a world of scarcity. Much of what we need is already circulating all around us and is surplus, so to speak. That's not to say systemic issues, distribution challenges, and greed and hoarding aren't issues. But there are lots of resources and still useful items and services out there just waiting to be matched with people who can use them. So if each of us got a lot better at and more comfortable with just asking and putting it out there what we want or need, we'd send a lot less financial support to the corporations that are lobbying against our best interests and trying to destroy our democracies. The power and potential of letting people know what you need was really driven home for me by Barbara Scher's TED Talk, Isolation is the Dream Killer. In it, she tells us about these success teams that she facilitated in which people simply let it be known to members of the group what they need. And every single time, someone in the group was able to connect them to the resources they were looking for.
She said, I want an animal refuge for old dogs and old animals. They just don't get treated. It's terrible. Old, even farm animals. And I said, what's your obstacle? I don't have any money. I don't have any land. I don't have a license. I don't have any training. I have nothing. I can't do it. I can't do it. And someone waved her hand. They always do. And she said, my friend's mother just was in an auto accident. She hurt her back. She won't be able to run her refuge anymore. She can't find anybody young to run it for her. She's got a license, she's got the money, she's got the land, she's even got the animals. You never know who we are. All the center of enormous amounts of information and connections that we don't need and we don't think of unless somebody asks us.
So many resources were unleashed and matched with people who would truly use and appreciate them, all because they spoke up and let their wants be known. I really hope you'll go watch that video, or at least the second half, in which Barbara shares even more amazing examples. I've linked to that video in the description below. And while Barbara Scher passed away in 2020, the Success Teams initiative lives on. And you can check the website to see if there are any active teams in your area, or sign up to learn how to lead one. But we don't have to be members of Success Teams or any particular group to let people know that we want or need something. Recently, I was really inspired by Brown's effort to procure a car for free by asking for it on social media.
I have an ask. In the next chapter of my life, I am going to be needing a car, and I'm going to try to source it outside of capitalism. And so I'm asking you, if you have a car that you are planning to sell, or you know someone who is selling a car, instead of selling it, instead of exchanging currency, give it to me.
Brown is an inspiring post-capitalist thinker based in Portland, Oregon. Eventually, someone in Oklahoma offered her a free car if she were willing to come there to get it. What might you be able to get if you just put it out there that you need it? I also realize not all of us have social media followings. Or even if you do, you might not be ready yet to make such a big ask publicly. Fortunately, there are some other options for getting connected to resources that don't involve exchanging money, which might also be good first steps. One in particular that comes to mind is the Buy Nothing Project, a worldwide network of gifting communities administered through Facebook and an app. People join local Buy Nothing groups in which they can post requests for things they need or offer up what they no longer want or have to share. While most people use Buy Nothing groups to offer or ask for material goods like kids' clothing, furniture, or kitchenware, there are numerous examples of people tapping them for free services, like an officiant for a wedding. The exchanges are really just limited by members' imaginations and what they're comfortable asking for. But these types of moneyless exchange groups aren't limited to the Buy Nothing Project. The Susquehanna Gift Circle has been around for about 10 years, connecting people in central Pennsylvania. It too is administered as a Facebook group and now numbers over 4,000 members. According to the founder, this group challenges dominant thinking around what it means to live together in support of neighbors and local systems. Another option fewer people know about are local time banks, where the currency is time, not money. Exchanges of both goods and services are recorded in specialized time banking software. I'm fortunate to live in a town with a pretty active time bank. When a fellow time banker borrowed my lawnmower, she logged the exchange in the time bank software. I then used that time banking credit I received and gave it to another member in exchange for that person taking pictures of me that I could use on social media. If you're wondering if there's a time bank in your area, go to the website ourworld.org to find out. And if you want to know more about time banking in general, watch the rest of that Rob Greenfield video, which I've linked to in the description below. Since time banks can be quite labor intensive to set up if you don't already have one in your community, you might want to consider learning how to facilitate an offers and needs market instead. This seems to be a less cumbersome and easier option to get going. Just like it sounds, these markets exist so people can come together and offer what they have and ask for what they need. The markets facilitate connections, putting underutilized resources to good use. Trainings and supporting materials are administered by the Post-Growth Institute and can be found at offersandneeds.com. And these days there's Symbi, which refers to the symbiotic economy. Symbi is like a global online time bank facilitating exchanges between people around the world, while also facilitating local in-person connections as well. As their website says, Symbi helps people do what they love and get what they need. These are just a handful of the platforms and organizations that can help connect us to more of those resources circulating all around us. I'd love it if you shared other examples you know about in the comments. When I do find myself contemplating buying something that I can't make or haven't rescued from the waste stream, I'll often first post a request for that item or service in my local time bank or Buy Nothing group to see if I can procure it for free from someone who no longer needs it or is joyfully offering that item or service to the world. And when I saw lots of lychees, which are one of my favorite fruit, just lying on the ground in several yards around my neighborhood, I went around and left handwritten notes with my phone number offering to clean up, pick, and harvest the fruit and share it with the owners. And you know what? 3 of the 4 homeowners called me back and said, sure, come on over. So I ended up with lots of lychees and new friends. So again, I ask you to ponder, what might you be able to get if you just put it out there in the world what you're looking for? I recognize that asking for what you want may take more time than quickly going to the store or logging in to shop. It may make you feel uncomfortable or vulnerable in front of others. Unfortunately, though, our collective preference for convenience shopping has played a significant role in leading us to where we are today. With oligarchs and corporate lobbying threatening democracy and our quality of life, I want to note that I am not suggesting that people can just ask for what they want as a way to escape extreme financial hardship. But for those of us with enough money to regularly buy those solutions to our problems, this could be a very impactful strategy, and it would likely improve your quality of life more than you can imagine. Hopefully, I've shared some ideas that will reduce your inclination to reach for your wallet or click that buy nothing button first when you need something. Not only does relying on each other more than corporations help us fight fascism, it also makes us a lot more resilient and far less susceptible to the whims of capitalism. It also saves us money and also increases our connections to others, making us feel less isolated and insecure. There it is. If you want to resist, defund, and stick it to the billionaires attempting hostile takeovers of governments around the world, start finding little ways to ask for what you need before you go buy it. So often the resources are already there if we're just brave enough to ask for them. And lastly, in this masterclass on boycotting billionaires and capitalism, it's time to turn the tables and start rethinking wealth entirely. You'll need to cultivate a true wealth mindset rooted in financial resilience and regenerative living. So let's take a look at how to do just that. The path to true wealth doesn't include accumulating lots of money and stuff, despite what corporate advertisers and social media would like you to believe. You can't add real meaning and value to your life by making and spending lots of money. That's not to say that a certain baseline amount of money doesn't add some stability to our lives, but those focused solely on financial wealth rarely find themselves feeling secure and deeply satisfied. Just look at all the billionaires that have more money than they could ever spend in one lifetime, but still find themselves compelled to earn more money by doing things that harm people, threaten democracy, and destroy the planet. Luckily, more and more of us are coming to realize that the pursuit of extreme wealth that we see in the 1% is often propelled by psychopathic tendencies and fragile egos stemming from unaddressed childhood issues and feelings of unworthiness. Their massive amounts of wealth are not providing them with the joy, purpose, connection, and peace of mind that are part of the true wealth most of us are seeking. Certainly for most of us, a lack of empathy would not be considered an asset in our true wealth portfolio. As it turns out, one of the best tools each of us can use to thwart these psychopathic billionaires who are attempting to create an oligarchy through which they privatize the assets which so far have been funded and owned by we the people, is starting to cultivate a true wealth mindset. A true wealth portfolio doesn't harm people and planet. On the contrary, it restores, rejuvenates, and repairs the many depleted people and our very depleted planet. It also diverts lots of financial capital away from those selfish billionaires and corporations, cutting off a major source of their oxygen, so to speak. Hey there, and welcome back to part 3 of my series on resisting and defunding the greedy billionaires that are threatening our democracy and quality of life. I'm Oldanie, a green living and money coach, helping people design financially resilient and fulfilling lives in the midst of late-stage capitalism, climate change, and now the descent into fascism. For anyone new to my channel, it's worth noting that my view of true wealth is shaped by not wanting to negate the very future I'm preparing for, unlike those billionaires. In fact, I want to be growing my wealth in ways that help evolve the better future that I know is possible for all of us. That means as we dive into this conversation about developing a true wealth mindset, you'll notice that these ideas honor and build on the 3 ethics of permaculture: earth care, people care, and fair share. Okay, I think we're ready to get to the 5 key features of a true wealth mindset. Number 1. Start with a clear vision of a truly wealthy life. You'll need to get beyond the images of yachts, mansions, designer clothes, and piles of money that inundate you from all sides. Set aside the parental expectations, the cultural expectations, what your friends think, and keeping up with the Joneses, so you can hone in on what a truly wealthy life looks like to you, and not what society thinks a wealthy life looks like. Maybe you want to work through a list of guiding questions, like what activities will fill your ideal day? What kind of community would you like to live in? Will you truly enjoy being a lawyer, or do you just want to be one because your parents want that for you, or because society thinks that's a desirable job? Going through these types of guiding questions is something my co-authors and I walk you through in our book, Growing Free. Or maybe you want to spend time making a vision board. In my own case, I simply got laser focused on 3 things in my life that I wanted to change. I no longer wanted to work a 9-to-5 job in an office. I wanted to spend more time outdoors, and I wanted a life in which I rode my bike a lot more than I drove my car. And now I live that life, and I got here by making decisions that moved my life in that direction. 2. Emphasize multiple forms of capital. Financial capital is just one of a number of forms of wealth available to us. In fact, financial capital is the most speculative, fragile, and soulless of all the forms of capital that we can access. It's also likely the least resilient. I've already made a separate full-length video on all the multiple forms of capital we can tap to truly enrich our lives, which you can find over here. So I'm not going to go into great detail about them now, but I will go ahead and highlight 3 of them quickly. 1 is experiential capital. That's the capital you gain through experience, learning how to do things. Maybe you have plumbing skills. Maybe you know how to paint. Maybe you know how to garden. Maybe you know how to cook. A second non-monetary form of capital is living or natural capital. So that's the air we breathe, the parks in our community, the peach tree in your yard. And thirdly is social capital. That's the capital we get through our social networks and our interactions with each other. Maybe we're involved with the PTA at the kids' school. Maybe we're part of an urban agriculture or sustainable living group in our community. Maybe you get your social capital through church. But these are the networks that support us. And in times of great need, it is our social capital that is our truest form of wealth. Now the third key feature of a true wealth mindset. Center holistic life design. Now that you're aware of the multiple forms of capital and have a clear picture of what a wealthy life looks like to you, you're ready to take a holistic approach to designing that rich life for yourself. That means instead of getting laser focused on earning lots of money and moving up the corporate ladder, you want to work on designing your life in a way that creates a holistically supportive environment, community, and landscape around you. I can't stress how important this is in these times of political, economic, and climate uncertainties. This holistic support system makes you a lot more resilient in the face of all of those challenges. Again, I'm not suggesting that money won't play a role in your life, but if you succeed at holistically designing your life, you won't need nearly as much of it as the financial gurus would like you to believe. That's because it involves a lot more creativity, resourcefulness, and out-of-the-box thinking than just doing what everyone else is doing. For example, if your version of a wealthy life involved sustainable living and spending time with certain friends, maybe you and those friends are spending time learning alternative building skills like earthships and cob houses, while also saving money and reading up about buying property together. 4. Prioritize regenerative assets. We're so conditioned to think that investing our money means putting it into the stocks of Wall Street, or maybe real estate, gold, or crypto. All of these options are harmful to people and planet. Not only that, they further enrich billionaires and corporations and perpetuate fascism and oligarchy. All things that are working really hard to destroy the future we're preparing for when we invest. But there are also assets we can direct our money, time, and passion towards that restore, rejuvenate, and regenerate people and planet. It's just that far fewer people are talking about them. Truly regenerative assets are things like useful skills that we can use to address our major social and environmental challenges and earn right livelihood while doing so. One example that comes to mind for me is my Growing Free co-author, Mike Hogue. He invested time, energy, and lots of passion into learning permaculture. Today, he's a well-known permaculture instructor, designer, and author with over 200,000 followers on TikTok. Along the way, he also made strategic investments in lesser-known plants that grow well in his part of the country. He offers these plants for sale now and regularly sells out of them. Plants and plant genetics are great examples of regenerative assets. You can also think along the lines of installing solar panels, which reduces your use of fossil fuels. They also save you money in the long run, and in some places you can even earn money back from the grid. We can also put our money into more regenerative financial instruments and investments than what we find on Wall Street. Options that address the world's challenges instead of making them worse. I'm thinking of things like Steward, a platform we can use to earn interest making loans to regenerative farmers. I'll be talking a lot more about these socially conscious investments I've made outside of the stock market in my next video, so be sure to check back if that's of interest to you. And number 5, when to say enough. How much is your enough? Enough money, enough stuff, enough prestige? In our fast-paced, money-centric world, we're bombarded with the drumbeat of earn more, do more, and be more. It's the anthem of hustle culture, a siren song luring us into the endless pursuit of more. But beyond a certain point, more turns into clutter, distraction, and noise, drowning out a truly wealthy life while perpetuating an endless growth mentality that has infected society. By discovering you're enough, you take a stand against the more is always better mantra perpetuated by capitalism. Getting clear on what enough is for me and setting limits accordingly has been one of my greatest sources of true wealth, both financially and holistically. And it's played a vital role in reducing my participation in the harmful elements of capitalism that uphold oligarchy, while helping me decipher what truly makes me feel resilient and secure. You'll know you're pursuing true wealth and not a false version of it when you see yourself doing it in ways that benefit you, your community, and the planet, more than those greedy billionaires, corporations, and politicians. You'll feel more authentic and less overwhelmed, more connected and less isolated, more resilient and less fearful, and excited to be contributing your gifts to the world in a way that feeds your soul and fights the oligarchy. And if I've intrigued you with this idea of growing free, financially resilient, and economically, ecologically, and ethically empowered, be sure to watch this video next. Mastering the principles of freedom goes hand in hand with designing a life of true wealth.